Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. And today we're going to be talking about diversity. Yes, that's right. That is the big buzzword right now in Hollywood and has been in the buzzword in Hollywood for a very long time. But now, just a few days ago, or actually just a couple days ago at this point, it has been spoken by the man who is currently running the MCU, the one who is behind the vision of Marvel, and that is Kevin Feige. And I've been on here several times before to defend Kevin Feige because he has done great things. The fact that in the past 10 years we have 20 films, only one of which, Black Panther, has even just a tinge of identity politics, and even then it's just such a small tinge, and overall it's a fine movie. I gave it a B- when I first saw it just because I think it was vastly overrated. There were some problems with the CGI, pacing, things like that. With all that being said, though, it's still a good movie, and I cannot deny it. There are definitely worse films than Black Panther out there. But with all that being said, what we never have really heard from Kevin Feige, at least clearly to this point, is what Cinema Blend is posting, and many other sites are reporting on as well. I know that Jeremy at Geeks and Gamers has covered this as well, is that Kevin Feige has spoken out and affirmed and confirmed a move towards more diverse voices. Now, let me just start off by saying there's nothing wrong with diversity. Diversity is a great thing. We are a diverse culture. We, any group of friends that you have, there's going to be diversity. You're not always going to be from the same race, the same background, the same language set. Like, there are so many differences between you and the people that you normally talk to, or the people that you engage with on a daily basis. I know for me, for example, I have people from all over the world that come in to watch the live streams, communicate, talk, and all these other things, and it's awesome. There's nothing wrong with diversity. What we do have a problem with, and what many of us speak out against here on YouTube especially, is forced diversity. The fact that people honestly believe, that diversity for the sake of diversity is in itself a positive. Instead of focusing on good filmmaking, instead of focusing on character development, they focus more on, okay, how can we get a black character in? How can we get a female character in? Oh, let's just start off with the concept of a strong female character and then build everything around it. That's just not the way to make a good story or to make a good film. And we can see plenty of examples of that previously. A great example being, of course, Ghostbusters 2016, where the primary premise was, let's make an all-female Ghostbusters. Now, notice how you start off with that premise, and then you have to be able to justify its existence, you have to be able to give it a plot, and obviously you're going to be borrowing on previous films and previous works in order to make that happen. And as we saw with Ghostbusters 2016, which unfortunately I somehow own the extended cut version because when I signed up for Movies Anywhere, it was the free movie that they gave me, and I've never watched it, and I really wish I found a way to be able to take it out of my collection altogether, so that way I never had to look at it ever again. But that is a great example of forced diversity. Again, a movie where the primary focus, the primary thing that's being out there, as I hear crazy things going on behind me, there must be a ghost. The primary reason why they made that movie was so that it could be an all-female cast, and as we saw, it bombed, it did terrible. Sure, critics may have liked it because of diversity, but that in and of itself does not make a good movie, and general audiences do not give a damn about that nonsense. But to be fair to Kevin Feige, because I have defended him up to this point, I know a lot of people said, oh, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Kevin Feige said forced diversity, etc. Well, let me actually read what he said, not what the media are trying to say about what he said, because obviously we know the media has an agenda. We know that all the news media is going to cover whatever these people say, and if there's even a small crumb of FJWism, if there's even a small crumb of identity politics, they're just going to say, look, see, this is the future, and you just have to deal with it, and if you don't like it, well, then you're a racist and you're a sexist. That's the media, for the most part. I mean, obviously, we can go to Star Wars as a great example with, going to Rian Johnson and the people like that, and we can see the, coming from a director, coming from actors also in that community as well. It does happen, but more often than not, the vast majority of this type of stuff comes directly from the shill media, comes directly from the NPC media itself. So let's actually read what the media statement is, but also very, very, very important, let's read what the man himself, Kevin Feige, actually has to say also. So we see here, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is an ever-changing place as the massive franchise recently celebrated a decade of filmmaking. The MCU has changed quite a bit since its inception, growing focus on a variety of characters and often relying heavily on comedic moments. While the Phase 1 largely focused on white male characters, the shared universe has become increasingly diverse place. Alright, here is where we have the first pause, because as you see, this is not Kevin Feige, this is a part of the media trying to say, well, Phase 1 focused mostly on, white male characters. No, the first phase focused on characters that they knew they could easily build upon to build the future of the franchise. And it had very little to do with the race of the person and a lot more to do with the character, with the fan base, and also with what they could do with their stories. You couldn't have had Black Panther come out, when it first, you could not have had Black Panther as a part of Phase 1. And it's not because, it's a black character, you can't build a foundation on that. No, not at all. It's just the fact that the Black Panther character was relatively unknown to the general masses and therefore would have been a harder sell, especially when you talk about Wakanda, you talk about a country that has been isolated from everything and yet is highly technical. Like, that's going to be a very hard sell unless you have other films to build on. Why do you think one of the first movies that they made was Iron Man? Why do you think the first, official MCU film that was out there was about a rich, wealthy man, essentially a Batman of the MCU who was able to build a suit? Because guess what? It's grounded in reality. It's something that general audiences can overall grasp to. Guess what the second film that came out was? A lot of people forget about this. The same year, 2008, the next movie that came out was The Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk is one of the lowest grossing MCU films, and it makes sense that they would want to do that because they said, okay, we were going to put Iron Man out there, they love it, they think it's great, perfect, it's a success. Well, let's try a different one. Let us try to put a little bit more of a risky character out there. And they did, and guess what? It wasn't a payoff. They barely broke even with that Incredible Hulk film with Edward Norton. Even though I personally love it, and I think it's one of the better films because obviously it still has that MCU quality to it, it still was about a character that people weren't ready for. So please, spare me the spin, Cinema Blend, for you trying to say, oh, it's all white men, blah, blah, blah. No. Just because the characters happen to be of a certain race, just because the characters happen to be of a certain background, that does not mean that it was done for that purpose. It means that the characters that were established at that time were the most profitable. It means that the characters at that time were the ones that they could build stories around. And obviously Captain America being not too long after that, because Captain America is probably one of the most well-known from comic book fans to non-comic book fans name out there. And again, it's easy to sell Captain America in America. But anyway, I digress. Phase 3 is the most obvious example of this. As the blockbusters began featuring more people of color, women, and possibly even an LGBT character, oh my god, this is diverse. Plus, those projects like Black Panther and Ant-Man and the Wasp have proven extremely successful with audiences. Marvel studio head Kevin Feige recently spoke to focus on telling inclusive stories in the future, saying, and then he's about to say the quote. And again, here I'll pause for a second because here's a little bit of that really irresponsible politicking that comes from so many people in the media. They, in the way that they said that, featuring people of color, women, possibly LGBT characters, Black Panther and the Wasp proven successful. They honestly believe that diversity for the sake of diversity means success. And that is just not true. That is just not true on any level. Now, one could make an argument, and I think a very valid argument, that Black Panther did well in the United States, because guess what? When you look at those numbers, it didn't do as well overseas because it's a story that's actually speaking out to an audience that's here and has the largest portion in the United States of America. So not only did it appeal to general audiences, but it also went after a certain niche audience that responded very well to it. How many people did you see dressed up as Black Panther? How many kids did you see who are looking up to his character now? I cannot tell you. I work at a school, a very diverse school, and guess what? You hear Wakanda Forever so often from the students, and it really is one of those things where obviously there are certain movies that are going to appeal to those certain audiences, but the movie wasn't successful just because it had an all-black cast. It wasn't just successful for that. It was successful because, for the most part, it was a well-made movie. You had fantastic actors in there, and also you had a message, for the most part, that was universal in tone. It wasn't just meant or made for people of a certain race or background. Because guess what? If they were to have done that with this film, it wouldn't have been as successful as it was. You had a capable pair of hands in Ryan Coogler behind the camera. Those are the reasons, the actors, the directors, all of the story elements and character arcs, all of those are the reasons why the film was successful. Yes, you can indeed, with this film specifically, point to that subsection, can point to that niche audience that also came out in droves. That is absolutely true. But that is not the only reason why it did well. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think, was the better example of that. Are you trying to tell me that the reason why the film did well, and also keep this in mind, Ant-Man is not a huge property. Ant-Man and the Wasp did not make as much money as other Marvel films have made. And it's not, even that itself is not because of the gender of the person on screen or because there was a split billing between a male and female protagonist. It's because the film was taking exactly what they had done in the first one, building on it, and keeping the same exact style. And not pushing for, oh, well, I'm a woman, I can do things myself. Because guess what? Had they done that, it wouldn't have done as well, because that kind of nonsense, that kind of politic, and that kind of identity politics has no place in these movies. So I'm really hoping whatever Kevin Feige is about to say here is going to be reticent of that, or is he simply going to fall into ignorance? But also at the same time, guess what? He's a producer in Hollywood. So I'm honestly not surprised if he says one thing or the other. But let's see what he says. Because again, I'd rather go to the man's words himself than me just speculate about what he said. He says, Black Panther is the beginning. That it worked out as well as it worked out has encouraged us to head in the direction we were going to head in anyway. But you look at that film, it is incredible. That movie would not have been what it was if everyone sitting at the table looked like you or me. All right, we see things going on here. And that is true of all movies. As Marvel Studios has grown, it is the same thing, almost half man and half woman, that may become more woman in the coming years based on the newest team members who continue to grow. We try to grow and promote in-house. Almost everyone who has worked here for many years, almost everyone here has worked here for many years, and people who are going to produce some of our next films came in below the people producing the films now. I very much believe in that. When you have diverse voices, you get better stories, and you get more exciting stories, you get more surprising stories, and that is something that is very clear. So here, I'm getting a bit of a mix. He's definitely not going full SJW here, but he's definitely dancing that line. I think that's the reason why he's been so successful, because he hasn't done what Kathleen Kennedy has done over in Star Wars. Instead, he has toed the line a little bit more, because obviously there are kernels in truth in here. Yes, diverse voices, but guess what that means? That doesn't just mean having more women and having more people of color. That means diversity in general. I mean, diverse political thought, diverse opinions, all of those things, of course, create better stories. And the reason why is not because they are diverse, but because when you have people coming from different places with different histories, with different backgrounds, and again, that's not just race, that's not just gender, that's also political philosophy as well. Hint, hint, Hollywood, you could do so much better if you actually started to open yourself up. And you always like to talk about diversity, except when it's diversity of thought. But imagine if you were to open it up to those types of things as well, then yeah, of course, you would have better stories, because you would have people fighting each other. You would have people pulling and trying to create the best product possible, instead of just the same people coming from the same place putting out the same stories. Obviously, one can see that that's boring. But the problem here that he is saying, and what a lot of people are saying, and people are probably twisting these words and taking it even further, as Cinema Blend obviously did in the very beginning, is that, diversity works no matter what, because diversity itself is a beautiful thing and is a good in and of itself. And again, there's nothing wrong with diversity. Diversity is a good thing. And as long as people are earning it, and that's what it seems like he's saying here. That's the reason why I think that he's towing that line, because he's not saying, oh, we're going to bring in voices just because of this. He's saying that everything's happening in-house. There are people who are telling stories. There are people who are building themselves up, who are improving themselves, and therefore they're making everyone better. And it's a sense of a teamwork here. It seems that he's also not taking everything on himself. He's not saying, I'm not the reason why the MCU is doing well. No. He's obviously the one on top. He's obviously the one overseeing everything, but he understands that he can't just have it be his way. He needs to rely on the people underneath him. He needs to rely on these various people from various backgrounds. And again, when I say various backgrounds, I don't just mean race and gender, because guess what? There's so much more to a person than just those things. Just again, your own thought, your own opinions are a huge part of that as well. Then yeah, obviously, if he's saying that, I totally agree with him. If he's trying to say here that he's going to make things more diverse and that it's diversity that creates results, that's the wrong way to think about it. And diversity is a good thing, but when you try and force it, when you try and take your films and try to make a political narrative instead of actually just telling a good, coherent story, that's where you're going to start to see problems come into place. A great example of that will be with Star Wars, which I'll get into in 1 second, since we are still talking about diversity here. But that's pretty much all he said. So let's just finish this article for Cineblend. In addition to giving Marvel audiences the chance to feel seen and represented in the media, diversity in the shared universe is positively affecting the quality of the films, and with the MCU showing no signs of slowing down, new perspective and surprising stories are exactly what Kevin Feige is looking for. And again, there's nothing wrong with new stories and new perspectives, but again, if you're just doing something for the sake of diversity, that is where the problem comes into play. And once again, the media is taking with this and focusing on that one element of what he said, forgetting everything else that he said about people building themselves up and not just people being given parts and given roles and giving us, being given a story just because of their background. I think that's a very clear and a very important indication to make. And he goes on. Kevin Feige's comments in Variety's Playbook podcast show how the head of the Marvel Studios is thinking about the MCU through a variety of lenses. When making creative decisions about the MCU's future, Feige must weigh what the studio wants with fan expectations and make a ton of money in the process. But after the insane success of projects like Black Panther, it's clear that Marvel's future is bound to be inclusive. Well, no one's against inclusivity. No one's against because keep in mind, inclusivity is not the same thing as forced diversity. Inclusivity means that you do not exclude any voices for a variety of different reasons. And again, when I say voices, I mean a variety of voices. And the sad thing in Hollywood right now is that they do actively shut out certain voices. Imagine if you were a Catholic, independent conservative trying to work in Hollywood. You would be shut out. Your voice wouldn't be welcomed. You wouldn't be included in that. And you see that happen all the time with the films and also with certain actors that get blacklisted because of their various thoughts. Black Panther was a record-breaking moment in film history as it featured mostly black talent, both in front and behind the camera. It's a movie that made a ton of money while also garnering glowing critical reviews and awards chatter. The residents of Wakanda came back in a major way. Infinity War, so smart money. The MCU is going to feature T'Challa world plenty in the post-Endgame world. Well, also, too, it just makes the most sense, seeing that the character itself is built on a high-technology society, so it makes sense that the actual ending to that movie would take place within that world. But here's the other problem with the media, is that they are essentially insinuating that the reason why Black Panther was successful was because of the black talent in front and behind the camera. That in and of itself is not why the movie succeeded. The reason why the movie succeeded is because you had competent people in front of and behind the camera. And it doesn't matter where background they come from. It doesn't matter what their race or their gender or their sexual orientation or anything else about them is. And as I say constantly before, most people, general audiences, do not care as much about race and gender on screen as much as they do about, is it going to entertain me and is it going to be a good, well-crafted story? And the fact is that you can be of any background, you can be of any race and be good at your job. So Black Panther was a success because you had a bunch of people who were good at their job. Obviously, I think that some of them weren't as good as some others might say, because I gave the movie a B-. But still, there was a lot of talent still there, especially on screen in the acting department. But that is not because it would be like saying that actor is good. It would be like saying Michael B. Jordan is good because he's black. No, he's good because he received training and he worked his ass off. He happens to be African American. He happens to have that background. But guess what? That doesn't make him good. And that's the problem with the media. They try and correlate the two things, saying that this means that diversity means success. No, that is not the case. Forced diversity does not automatically equal success. Go look to Ghostbusters 2016. Oh, representation. Terrible movie. Guess why? Because they focus only on that one aspect of forced diversity instead of trying to tell a good story. Black Panther. Obviously, you can see some sense of forced diversity there to a point, but only to a point. Because guess what? They still hired the best people for the job that could have done everything right. Ryan Coogler did amazing work with Creed 2. With Creed 1. They saw that. They realized that he was the perfect man to pick up this movie. And guess what? He knocked it out of the park and was fantastic. So again, diversity, that is not a problem. Forced diversity, though, the mindset that Cinema Blend and so many people in the media and Hollywood have of saying this equals success, it's just a cop-out, because there are so many examples that we can point to say, oh, well, if that's true, then why didn't this work? And of course, their response is, well, that's because it's a bunch of racist and sexist and blah, 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 blah. No. It's because we understand what makes a movie good and what makes a movie bad. Speaking of people who don't know what makes a movie good and what makes a movie bad, we can just stop by for the Mary Sue for a second, because we're still talking about diversity here, and diversity is also one of the many reasons why we see such a downturn in the Star Wars universe. And again, when I say diversity, I mean forced diversity. That's obviously, you guys, if you've been watching my videos at this point and you've gone this far, you know what I'm talking about. And when it comes to Star Wars, one of the reasons why the film has gone downhill is because of forced diversity. The fact that they brought in a character, they made up an entirely different character, Rose Tico, to try to appeal to Asian markets. That alone should tell you, well, the character sucked, because guess what? They cared more about her race than they did about actually making her a compelling character. Now, there's some people out there who will say, oh, no, she's great, you're just racist because of that. No, I don't care. I mean, John Boyega is a great actor. I thought he was a perfect choice for Finn. Guess what happened? They focused more on that than they did about writing him a good story and a good character arc. So again, it's just crazy how these people think. Kate Gardner, of course, is insane, and she works over at the Mary Sue, and she says, please, Star Wars, let Poe Dameron or any hero be gay. No. We've already seen what forced diversity does to Star Wars. It led to The Last Jedi. It led to what we saw in Solo Star Wars Story, and guess what happened? Star Wars has now begun to lose money, and Episode 9 is very much on the track to not break $1 billion. And people always say, oh, that's not a big deal. Well, when your film is costing $400 to $500 million and you only get 60% of the box office returns, yes, even Disney, yeah, it becomes a problem if you can't hit that number, because that means you are barely breaking even, possibly even losing money. Just ask Solo, that lost $200 million at the box office. And yes, those numbers do check out. But with all that being said, if Hollywood continues to pander to asshats like this over at the Mary Sue, who try and make them believe that diversity sells sells product. Forced diversity sells movie. Having Poe Dameron be gay, that's going to be what makes the movie successful. You're going to lose. You're going to continue to drive fans away. And it's not because a character is gay. Most people could care less about the sexual orientation of a character. What we do care about is if you're making a character a sexual orientation, or you're choosing or casting a character because of their race or gender, and that is the primary purpose for what you're doing. If that just happens to be a part of their character, okay. Like, we're not against that type of thing. What we are against is SJWs working in the media having an impact on what we get in our films. Because what we get in our films is supposed to help us escape. But these people instead want every film to be a reflection of reality, and not just reality, of their warped reality, where there is no male or female, where there is no up or down, where science only matters when it's convenient to them, and when their own safe space feelings rule the day. But anyway, guys, what are y'all's thoughts on this? Obviously, I could make an entire video on this, but I decided just to throw it in at the very end because this is still relevant to the talk about diversity. What do you think about this? Do you think that Star Wars should have a gay character? It's like, well, I think that it wouldn't be a problem if there was a character in Star Wars that was gay, but at the same time, too, I don't understand why you feel the need for it to happen. I don't think that anything's going to be lost if there isn't a character. Oh, but representation. Most people don't care about representation because, again, just look to ask any audience member, do you care? Did you see this movie because of the race or gender of the person on screen? And I guarantee you those numbers are going to be very, very low for the people that said that actually mattered. And also, what are your thoughts on Kevin Feige? Again, I don't really see anything here in this quote that he says that worries me too much. Obviously, I do have some concern. I do have to say that off the bat because obviously we have Captain Marvel coming out, and Captain Marvel has gotten a lot of NPC SJW buzz, not only from the media, but also from the lead actress herself, Brie Larson, and that's causing a lot of us to have some concerns about the future of the MCU, and I don't think that this quote helps any. I don't think that it hurts as much as some people say it does, but it definitely doesn't help. There's definitely reason to be concerned if he's talking about forced diversity, if he's talking about natural progression of filmmaking that includes diverse voices because that's just how the world works. Okay, that's fine. None of us are against those types of things. None of us are against, we're not trying. It's so funny how people call it racist and sexist, but it's, last time I checked, I'm not saying that you shouldn't hire anyone who's a different race. I'm not saying that you shouldn't hire or create a character for someone who isn't a particular race or gender. None of us are saying that. That actually would be racism and sexism. What we're trying to say is that forcing it to happen instead of letting it happen naturally, that is where the problem comes into play. But guys, I would like to hear your thoughts on Kevin Feige. I'm not as worried, but I'm sure and understand why you might be worried on top of that, especially with Captain Marvel. But guys, if you like this video, smash that like button, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a great night, and as always, God bless.